welcome back to Don't Open That Door. Come along with our triumvirate of terror as we descend into darkness, hurtle into horror, and plunge into peril. If you've ever found that a group of cannibals really weren't that bad once you got to know them, you're in the right place. I'm Justin.
Wow.
And I'm the Justice Arcana.
I'm Nico, the Chariot.
And I'm Dan, the Tower.
And we're here today to review The People Under the Stairs from 1991. This one was directed by Wes Craven, starring Brandon Quintin Adams as Fool, AJ Langer as Alice, Sean Whalen as Roach, Everett McGill as Daddy, Wendy Roby as Mommy, and Ving Rhames as Leroy. We open with Poindexter, better known as Fool due to his sister's affinity for tarot cards. He's a 13-year-old living with his sick mother, aforementioned sister, and some other kids. Fool and his family are being evicted by their evil-ass landlords because they are 3 days behind on rent and now have to pay triple, which sounds super illegal. Leroy, a local criminal, tells Fool that he can make some good money if he helps him with this heist he's got going on. Fool is hesitant, but eventually agrees so that he can help his family make rent and pay for his mom's medical treatment. Nico, what's the score?
So, as it turns out, the plan is to rob Fool's evil-ass landlord. Great plan. Love it. Leroy then says that the landlord has a collection of golden coins worth a lot of money, which would help them out immensely. So Fool, Leroy, and one other man begin to case the house. Fool isn't successful, so the other man poses as a utility worker to gain entry in there. And the woman who lives there, otherwise known as Mommy, lets him in. She leaves, and Fool and Leroy realize that something is very wrong. So they break into the house and look for their compatriot.
Well, Dan, I know you'd break into a house to rescue me, so tell me, what happens next?
I'd break into your house to rescue you.
From yourself.
Anyways, Fool heads down to the basement, where he finds the recently deceased body of his partner in crime. He also sees some strange, pale-looking people in the basement, and he runs upstairs as Alice, a girl who lives in the house, opens the door to let him out. Mommy returns home with a man, otherwise known as Daddy. Wait. And the pair realize the house has been broken into. Daddy sicks his dog on the pair of them, kills Leroy, and the Fool hides.
Well, I ain't afraid no dog, so I'll take the next piece. Eventually, Fool runs into Alice again, and she tells him that the people in the basement are all children, or former children, that Mommy and Daddy put down there for breaking rules and being bad. One of them, Roach, has managed to escape the basement and runs around inside the walls of the house, infuriating Daddy. Roach meets up with Fool, but just then, Daddy shows up and shoots at Roach, wounding him. He then tosses Fool in the basement to be eaten by the children. Yeah, they're cannibals. But Roach saves him. Roach is dying, but he does give Fool a pouch of gold and tells him, in a manner of speaking, that he wants Fool to save Alice from the house. Then he dies. Nico, how's the rescue attempt go?
So Fool gets back to Alice's room, and they try to escape at that point, but Alice is too frightened to jump from the roof. So she remains in the house while Fool escapes. He gives the gold coins to his family and learns that Mommy and Daddy are brother and sister, and they've actually stolen all those kids. See, if you said hot to that would be a real problem. Then he calls the police to report child abuse. Again, thank God. Cops show up, but they're fucking useless, and Mommy and Daddy manage to deceive them into thinking that nothing is wrong. The cops then leave, but Fool manages to slip in undetected. He then reveals the truth to Alice, but Mommy and Daddy attack both of them. And while this is happening, Fool's sister and the rest of his neighborhood show up to air their grievances they have with Mommy and Daddy and their predatory landlord practices.
Well, Dan, you don't have people under your stairs, but you definitely got people upstairs.
Oh, for sure.
Real fucking talk.
So why don't you close this one out?
I feel like they're another member of the podcast at this point.
Might as well. So Mommy attacks Alice with a knife, but Fool frees the people under the stairs, and they come to her aid. Eventually, Mommy is killed. Similarly, Fool finds a room full of money and dynamite and he blows it up, killing Daddy and somehow nobody else.
He's like, fine.
Yeah, flies across the room. The movie ends with the evil landlord dying, the people under the stairs escaping to freedom, and the neighborhood being showered with the money that the evil landlords were hoarding. Happy ending. The end.
Right you are, and let's get right down to it, shall we? First, Nico, how's this movie look?
I really like the way this looks. It's a pretty grimy set for everything that it is, but it has a certain sort of vibe that I really gel with. I think it has to do with Wes Craven's direction, because he really does nail that sort of gritty, grungy, scary, almost setting itself kind of vibe. And for what it's worth, even though the people under the stairs were perhaps a little silly, they were still monstrous enough to work for me.
Mm-hmm. I thought that the people under the stairs reminded me in terms of looks a little bit like, what was the one Lovecraftian movie that we watched that ended up having the tree? The Unnameable. They looked a little bit like the creature from The Unnameable with the white hair and everything.
Yeah, for sure.
But I agree with you, Nico. It's not like Netflix quality. This movie also came out in 91. And to me, it looks like a step up or two steps up from like a made-for-TV production. But I still think it looks good enough and carries its point well. Dan, how about you?
Yeah, I pretty much echo everything you guys said. I also like how the house has some big-ass fucking walls. Deep walls.
Yeah.
Like, they have these, like, tunnels and shit everywhere. They be popping out of, like, cupboards and, like, the kitchen cabinetry and, like...
Winchester Mansion who?
Yeah, for real.
Indeed. Well, don't stop there. Tell me about the sound, Dan.
I thought it sounded pretty good. I don't have too much to add on that either. I enjoy some of the dialogue. I thought some of it was kind of tongue-in-cheek. One of my favorite lines, Leroy actually had a few good lines. I thought some good quips. But overall, I enjoyed it.
Yeah, pretty much. I'm not going to lie. Some of my favorite things from the sound was also dialogue involving Fool. Like, there's one point in time where he sees, again, the people under the stairs. He's like, yo, I'm not stupid. And he, like, runs away. And I was like, good man. And I don't know. I feel like, in general, the dialogue was good. The soundtrack was what I kind of expect from Wes Craven. It fit his style very well. And I really don't have too much else to add. Nico, slide in here.
Yeah, so I think the performances on the whole were done very well. I was particularly both delighted and perturbed to see Everett McGill and Wendy Roby on this, since I'm a massive Twin Peaks fan, and those who have seen the show will know what an absolute just heartwarming sweetheart this man is on that show. And boy howdy, he's not that in here, because within the first like 5 minutes he just casually drops the hard R in there. And man, just very quickly establishing what kind of worthless scum you are. So for what it's worth, I mean, it is a good... He is a properly menacing villain, and I'm glad that the movie has that.
Yeah, agreed.
As is Mommy.
Love Mommy. So let's get down to business here, shall we? First and foremost, we got to talk about Fool, and namely his namesake, which is in fact the Fool Arcana. So, Nico, what can you tell me about the Fool Arcana and why it suits our protagonist?
So it suits our protagonist just because of the cinematography. Like, we focus in on it for a solid like 3 minutes, I want to say, at one point in the beginning. So it establishes like, this is what we're dealing with here. But also the Fool sort of represents new beginnings, potentially perilous circumstances, not necessarily as much as the tower, but like, you're going to be undergoing some sort of change, whether it's from within you or externally, but you're going to be going on some kind of journey, and it's something that you are completely and totally unprepared for, which is why the sort of moniker that's been laid bare to that card is the Fool. Like, there's no way possible you could have been prepared for this, and there is no way possible that Fool could have known what to expect, but he handled it like a fucking champ. So
Dan, I want to zoom in real quick on your Arcana here for a sec. Given that the Fool represents change. What change do we see in Fool throughout the movie?
It's almost like a coming of age, kind of, a little
Very
bit.
much so.
Very, yeah.
So it's cool because at the beginning of the film, when his sister is explaining the fool, she mentions something like, not the fool because you're stupid, but the fool because you're ignorant. You haven't done this yet. So it's just really cool to see when he starts casing the house and all this kind of stuff. He doesn't really know what he's doing. He's a little more scared. But then throughout the film, he kind of he grows into himself. And I mean, he's one of the few protagonists in a horror film that escapes and then comes back to save people and
Yeah.
succeeds, you know? So he definitely comes back and does good by really everybody, the people under the stairs, his neighborhood, everything.
Indeed. Now, I want to follow up on that with just some general themes. And one in particular that sticks out to me is gentrification and just generally pushing people out of their homes. Now, this level of social commentary isn't always seen in horror movies, although with Jordan Peele, it definitely is, and
Yeah.
with others as well. But it's interesting to see it kind of woven in here because Fool's house, his apartment where he lives, it's not very good. And you come to realize the reason why things are the way they are is because the landlord purposely keeps things in this like dog shit condition and just keeps raising the prices over and over again so that they can demolish it, build new and more expensive things, and essentially kick people out of their homes. And I think it's interesting because they were essentially kind of waging war on Fool's home, and he ends up taking the fight to them at their home and blows that shit the fuck up. So that was pretty interesting. Nico, any themes jump out to you outside of that?
Yeah, I mean, the the way that you've described it there just kind of makes this almost into a feel-good movie. And like it is.
It
but
is.
like it's not something that, you know, judging from the harrowing events that Fool goes through, I think would be immediately clear. But like this does feel overall just like a win for good people on the whole, because like everyone is very objectively just suffering in, they call themselves a ghetto, and it is a situation where people are having to resort to means that are less than ideal. You know, there is a quote from somebody that I cannot remember for the life of me, but it goes, the gist of it's like this: crime is the inevitable result of when people do not have access to their immediate needs. And when those needs are just not met, this is just a sort of a natural course of thing that happens in society. And we are seeing here what happens when a villain who is depriving people of those needs get their recompense. And yeah, that feels really good in this day and age.
Dan, any thematics that stuck out to you?
Yeah, when I watched this movie, it felt like an adventure, kind of.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking that the whole movie, and when I finished the movie, I was kind of looking up on the internet about some things, and I read a really cool article by Cody Merrick from Scary Studies,
Oh,
and he talks about how this movie relates to A Knight's Tale, and not A Knight's Tale's in the movie.
Oh, wow.
But A Knight's just like the tale of a knight, and like the classic adventure knight kind of tale, slay a dragon kind of thing.
mm-hmm.
And it's actually really, really cool because, you know, he was saying this is Wes Craven's take on that, a classic story like that. And I actually really agree with that. I mean, you have the princess who needs to be saved in Alice. You have Fool is, you know, your knight, your main character going after this. He's going after treasure, quite literally going after gold and treasure.
Yeah.
You have the big scary bad dragon who's mommy and daddy.
And dragons hoard gold.
Right, exactly. And I thought it was very weird that Wes Craven put like a literal hoard of gold in the movie. I was like, I don't know, like who has that? That's really weird. But in this context, it really, really makes sense. So I just thought that was really cool. And that when I read that, I was like, wow, that's why it felt like an adventure to me. Even though like it's in a house and he's not going on this grand Lord of the Rings type adventure or anything like that, but it still checks the boxes of an adventure.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because the entire time I was watching, I was thinking like this almost feels like The Goonies, kind of.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like The Goonies meets Bones or whatever it was called, the one with Snoop Dogg.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Dan, that's actually a really cool interpretation because I definitely thought that this for sure felt a little like the Goonies.
Yeah.
Incredible.
And I also thought that, him being a kid, I normally don't like movies with like kids or younger teenagers in the protag role because I feel like bad things aren't going to happen. But at the same time, it makes sense and it works because especially when you're younger and you go into like a big house, like that shit could be scary, bro.
Yeah.
And everything is bigger when you're that small, when you're younger. So it makes things larger than life, which I appreciate. Now, Nico, since you failed to highlight any movies that this reminded you of, let me ask you this. How does this compare to other Wes Craven joints you've seen?
So I've already talked about the visual design that kind of seeps through, but I also like the way that, in particular, Mommy and Daddy are relentless. A lot of Wes Craven villains, in particular, I'm thinking of Freddy because he's the most iconic, but I think oftentimes in Wes Craven movies, the villains really don't give the heroes any sort of chance to sit and regain their breath and, get their surroundings in order and et cetera, et cetera. So I think the fact that they are just so ever present is a big similarity. Maybe not necessarily in the other parts, but I definitely see the villains as sort of iconic Craven villains. At least I do now.
I see. Dan, how about you?
I don't have too much on that, but for me, one similarity I'm thinking is it's kind of vague, but Wes Craven's ability to tell a larger or deeper or different story within his story. So, I mean, I'm thinking like what comes to mind is like New Nightmare and how it's very meta and he's telling a different story, but in Nightmare on Elm Street world.
Yeah.
And same thing in this where he's telling again like a Knight's Tale type of thing. He's telling that whole story pretty effectively, but in a different world, in a different setting. And I think he has a great ability to do that kind of stuff.
Exactly. And I would also say, for me, the People Under the Stairs, maybe a little bit reminiscent of the villains from The Hills Have Eyes.
I haven't seen that, so I can't speak to it, but we should definitely review that at some point.
You should put some eyes on those hills. But I will say that they're not the same thing at all as the villains from The Hills Have Eyes. And I thought the kids were going to be like the classic super inbred villain type thing, but they're not. They're just regular ass kids that got stolen and tossed in a basement. So that was different, I guess.
And kind of fucked up as well.
Yeah, definitely fucked up.
Tongues cut out and like,
yeah.
Here's the part that got me the most fucked up. How do they all have active working flashlights?
They give them flashlights.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they like.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Maybe that part wasn't as clear, or maybe I just missed the part when they said that, because I was wondering, like, how the fuck have they been down here so long and they all have, like, batteries and shit?
Yeah, flashlights are like their gifts to them when they behave and stuff, and that's how they keep them under control.
Got you. Okay.
Now, let me ask you this. Who is this movie for?
The woke lift? I don't know.
Solid shout.
Literally in this case.
I'm not entirely sure. And when I was watching the movie, I was kind of trying to ask myself that because, like I said, I think it's very adventure-y, but it's definitely not family friendly in any way,
Certainly not.
So I don't think who I don't think it's for is somebody who's looking to be scared, because I don't think it's like that kind of horror movie. So there's not a lot of like scary parts. There's not even like jump scares or like a ton of tension's not the right word because there's some, but it's not super dark and it's, spooky or anything.
It's mostly the gore, really.
Yeah. And language too, I guess.
Yeah, yes.
Very much.
Kiss your ass goodbye. I
think, like Nico said, it's almost like a feel-good movie. So I think if you're looking for an adventure that has a horror twist to it, I think this is right up your alley.
Yeah, I was talking with Nico a little bit about this film, and I said, it's not like super scary, shit your pants scary, nothing like that. But at the same time, first off, Dan, to what you just said a minute or two ago, You know, I referenced the people under the stairs and everything, and like they don't fixate on it, but it's pretty fucked up that they just kidnapped a bunch of kids, threw them in the basement, and then like, depending on what they did, oh, you called for help, I'll cut out your fucking tongue, or you did something wrong, like no ears for you or something. So it's definitely messed up, but the movie doesn't fixate on those parts of it. So there's definitely horror things to go around. I mean, they feed a dude's hand to their dog, but at the same time, it's perfect, I think, for someone who's trying to get into horror and doesn't want to be overwhelmed. I think it's not super overwhelming, especially with the young protagonist and just the general feel-good factor of the movie. I think it's perfect for someone like that. And, you know, I think that's it. Honestly, I'm surprised they didn't try to come down on that R rating to get it down to PG-13. Maybe they couldn't, just given the concept, but it would have been interesting to see.
And I almost kind
of... And the fact that I think it's Leroy. I think that they literally gut and like eat.
Well, that's the worst.
There's quite a few reasons.
I mean, dropping the N-bomb used to be okay in G movies. So let's not get too astray from that.
Yeah, like decades and decades and decades ago.
Not
the 90s.
This was decades ago, 30 years ago, 30 plus years ago.
Bro, find me one G-rated movie from the 90s with the N-word in it. I dare you.
I will go on this quest.
Go on your own adventure. Hopefully less fucked up adventure.
Bro, your Google searches are about to be real fucking weird.
As if they weren't. So
maybe it'll actually fix things. That's how fucked up his searches are.
Now, Nico, who's this movie for you?
So I feel a little weird saying this as a white man, but black and brown kids, I have to imagine this would resonate particularly well with, and just anybody, regardless of your race, who is upset with vile and violent racism and the results therein.
Yeah, you could like send this movie to your landlord. Listen, man, this was going to happen. You keep asking me for rent.
Hey, I'm going to get some questionably affected dynamite and put it in the house.
Bro, he had fucking, safe spell? Like, so it doesn't affect your allies?
Yeah.
Whatever that is.
That's a saving throw.
He had that on there and just, you know, it worked.
Because there's no fucking way that Fool would make it out of there alive.
Oh my God.
What?
Sorry, quick side note. So, you know, in House on Turnt Hill, that's Betrayal at the House on the Hill, for those of you who actually know the real name of the board game. And
yeah.
So you know how like there's like two younger kids you can play as. There's like an Asian kid and there's a black kid.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure the black kid is meant to be like
Fool.
Referencing Fool. I'm 99% sure of that. Because they're all
just plays Bean,
which also doesn't make sense to anybody, but
yeah, they're all references. They're all horror references, one way or the other.
Yeah.
And it's pretty funny. Sorry, that just blew my mind for a sec. Anyways.
No, you're probably right.
Our villains. Let's talk about Mommy, Daddy, and Prince, Arf Arf, who is the dog.
Why the gimp suit, though?
Yeah.
Damn. Gimp suit? What are you talking about?
So Daddy is a little odd, and I don't know if he has like, whatever. So
no, speak your truth.
I was gonna say like multiple personalities or something. It's not quite that intense. I don't think that much switch, but yeah, he's a little off. And bro, this caught me off guard so much. He's like hunting for Fool, I think, or somebody, maybe Roach in the walls or something. And he grabs a shotgun. He's like shooting the walls up, and then he like is like, nah, I gotta get my uniform. So he like leaves and comes back in a full-on gimp suit. I'm like, why is a gimp suit your hunting uniform?
And how did he get it on so quick?
Yeah, that too. That was wild.
Yeah, Nico, what's your thoughts on Mommy and Prince?
I think that the gimp suit is part of his sort of like, he gets off on it to once again like evade the question and go back to something previously.
Yeah. What do you think about Mommy and Prince? Well, the gimp suit, he gets off on it.
No, I think that Prince, here's the thing with Prince. I feel like Leroy was kind of dumb
Yeah.
in the end there, because he hides behind the couch and he says he's like gonna take care of the dog, but like in the end he never even makes contact with the dog, or does he even swing at him? I don't think he does.
I don't think so.
No.
Yeah, so his death was 100% his own fault. He could have evaded that situation if he tried a little harder.
Mommy, any thoughts on her?
She's terrifying. Her character in Twin Peaks is a little more off kilter, so this was a little bit less of a leap than Everett McGill's counterpart here. But I just every time she was on screen, I just felt like I was doing something wrong, just because it was not a good presence. Again, like, it is unsettling to see her alone, is unsettling to see her with Daddy. It's just the vibes are off. They are very, very off, man.
Yeah, true enough. I will say, for the record, Prince is an unfortunate tool that's used in the oppression and subjugation of others.
I feel bad for Prince.
You can see that he doesn't hold any hostility towards Fool at all, because when he's just standing there, he's like regular dog type shit. And I was like, oh, unfortunate. I thought maybe Prince was going to like pull a face turn at some point and attack his owners because they mistreat him or something. But I guess not. Daddy's kind of weird, man. Like, he is, I think, the prototypical aggressive, loud, bad, kind of racist and things like that. He shows a lot of those characteristics. But at the same time, there's Mommy, who's equally as bad, but to the outsider would appear more innocent, which is, again, historically a role that a lot of WW white women have played in the especially racist times and leading up to present, where they've been able to hide a lot, because that's kind of her thing, right? She's able to hide, be innocent. Oh, what do you mean? You want some cookies and milk, officer? And I'm just like, all right, you sick and twisted. And she definitely also, they don't explicitly come out and say it, but especially with Alice, because they make several references, particularly Daddy, to her being a whore. And they're like, oh, she's already slept with him and all that stuff like that. And they're super obsessive about her purity and innocence and this, that, and the next. And she plays a huge role in that as well. Mommy does. So it's interesting to see that. Now, speaking of interesting, it might surprise you or might not surprise you to know that Jordan Peele and Monkey Paw are going to be doing a remake of this movie. Monkey Paw being his studio. I believe it's his studio. And I'm super curious to see what he would do. My only thought is, I feel like the movie came out in 91, but I feel like the concepts and everything immediately translate over.
Yeah.
It doesn't really come across as super dated to me personally.
100%.
So I wonder what he would do, but I'm psyched to see it. Dan, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that could be kind of cool. I do hope that he keeps sort of the adventure-y feel to it, and the this is going to sound weird, but the lightheartedness. It's definitely not a lighthearted movie, but there's definitely like quips and even like Daddy, like him just like yelling like, kill him, and like weird voices and stuff.
It's weird little dances and shit too.
Yeah, he low key kind of reminds me of, like, I feel like Jim Carrey could play that character pretty well.
Yeah.
But I hope that Jordan Peele kind of keeps some of those qualities to it as well.
Indeed. Nico, what's your thought here in terms of what you hope to see in the remake?
So, first off, I want to say I feel like if given an opportunity, Nia DaCosta would also knock this out of the fucking park, just given how incredible the 2021 Candyman was. But I think in particular looking forward to some more interesting updated cinematography, perhaps, that Jordan Peele could use to his advantage, but also I'm just curious to see what they do with the gore specifically, because that's always the highlight. Like, I'm not so worried about what the metaphorical or maybe even not metaphorical gold will be. Like, maybe it's, again, just gold, or maybe it's fucking crypto this time. I don't know. But, like, I'm more concerned as a horror fan with just how the horror part of it is going to be. So I'm really interested to see what sort of visceral shit we've got in store.
Indeed, indeed, indeed. And with that said, let's make our way over to the what would you do right now. So we're going to have to put ourselves here into our 13-year-old selves.
Okay. All right.
Now, let me ask you something. Between the three of us, who suits the character of Alice the most, who suits Fool the most, and who suits Roach the most? I have a theory.
I don't know, man.
Because I think, Nico, you would be Alice. I think I'm Roach. And I think Dan is more like Fool than anyone else.
Okay, state your case.
Yeah, I don't know. I can see Justin skittering around inside the walls.
Bro, if I was in someone's walls, I would troll the shit out of them. Like, you would never get a chance, a moment's peace.
And that's what Roach is doing.
Fucking
So
would.
I know. Well, that's why, because I feel like I just troll the shit out of people. And then Nico would, like, I don't know, feed me some scraps. Like, hey, yo, bro, I got you. And I don't know. I feel like Dan would be Fool because Fool does what's right. He might have some, like, moments where he steps off the course, but inside he knows what's right and what's wrong.
Yeah.
And once he starts doing what's right, he feels a lot better about it. I think I put Nico in the role of Alice, or an Alice-esque role, because I could see Nico having like a lot of standards and things kind of like foisted on him. And I could see like kind of his escape, quote unquote, slumming it with people like me. So yeah, I could definitely see that. And that's why I assigned these characters here.
I'll be your hood princess, Justin, anytime.
wow.
Yeah, you heard it here first, folks. That's how this is gonna work. Sure. Oh my god. Well, that being said, how do you think the three of us would work against the villainy of Mommy and Daddy? Do you think we could defeat them? And if so, how would we?
I mean, as 13-year-olds, and they are themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, continuing your analogy there, I feel like you would just troll the shit out of them in the walls, and you'd be like the distraction, kind of. And you're also like mad lucky, you know, like in a lot of like, characters you play and portray and stuff, you're always like the luck character, you know?
Yeah.
So I feel like Roach got lucky a lot, and you would.
Yes.
He
did.
See, I feel like he wouldn't. I feel like Justin would just push the buttons one time too far, and then suddenly this maniac who has a rather devil-may-care attitude about his own house, shall we say, he fucks some shit up in that house.
Yeah.
He absolutely destroys in everything. At any moment's notice, this man is bound to stab into the wall, shoot into it, go up in the chimney, fuck your shit up, reverse Santa style one time for the mind. Like, it's not a good time for anybody.
Bro, he gets home alone once or twice as well. Can I just say that?
Yeah,
like they
he
drop
does.
a brick from on top of the chimney onto his head, and I'm like, he's got to be concussed. There's no fucking way. And that gimp suit has like a +1 to defense. It's not giving him shit. And then, I don't know, it happens like twice or 3 times. At one point in time, Fool just straight up like powers up and like super punches him in the dick.
Yeah.
That was the part that I'm talking about though. That's like the weird part where it's like, it's him and her alone in the room, and he starts questioning her and he gets kind of close. I'm like, what's going to happen here? And then Fool shows up and gives him a quick nut check. And I'm like, all right, there we go. Back to reality. So I don't know about that one.
Well, there goes gravity.
But yeah, I mean, I think we could as well. I just feel like we got that teamwork. So first off, Nico would probably like hesitate a little bit to jump from the roof, but I feel like
No, the fuck I would not. That is an easy survival. Are you kidding me?
There you go.
The entire time Alice was hesitating. I was like, just fucking do it. There's water. You'll be fine.
Well, I was like, also, maybe you can. She's like, there's nowhere to go. And like, if you look down, there's like a little balcony right beneath where they were.
Yeah.
So I was like, hey, it's possible. Also, these people must have the most lax neighbors I've ever seen in my
Holy
fucking
shit, bro.
life.
Yes.
Like, yo, the amount of gunshot that goes on in that household.
I think they also just have like soundproof walls because they're like so much shit is happening. Like at the beginning when they're like kind of break into the house and like Leroy and Fool are doing all this shit, and then they're like, oh, somebody's upstairs. Let's go sneak up on them. Like, how are you gonna sneak up on them? You've like busted up a whole bunch of shit already. You're yelling at each other and shit. Like, come on.
And also, like, every floorboard creaks.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of nuts. It's kind of nuts. But nevertheless, let's go ahead and take it now to the critic review, shall we? What do you guys think this has on Rotten Tomatoes?
I'm gonna guess like middling to average. I'm gonna guess like a 65.
I'm gonna guess a little higher, like a 75.
Well, Nico wins because this does,
damn
in
it.
fact, have a 61% on Rotten Tomatoes. Sorry, I lied. It's a draw. Justin looked at the wrong category and he apologizes.
Wow.
Second time we've ever had a draw, though. The other one was pretty
This-
recently, wasn't it?
I think so.
I can't remember what it was, though.
This has a 70% from critics on Rotten Tomatoes.
Wow. Okay.
The audience was a little bit less giving with the 61%. Now, I want to ask, where do you fall on this? What do you think?
I really like this. This has got a lot of charm, and I'm a fan of everything that the movie is about. So I'm going to give this an 85.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun with it. I liked, as I've mentioned a number of times already, the adventure aspect of it. I think it did feel like the Goonies, like Home Alone-ish. Like it just had a really cool vibe to it, and I had a good time watching it. I'm also going to give it an 85.
I had a great time watching this. I feel like this is the kind of movie that I used to watch with my mom back in the day. I'm surprised we hadn't watched it together. And I like
All the weird shit you've shown your mom.
Yeah, you also watched a lot of other kind of shit.
I'd like to point out one thing. You say weird shit I've shown my mom, but isn't it really weird shit that my mom put on the TV?
Is it? I don't know.
You were there.
Listen, man, Sci-Fi Saturdays, me and my mom for fucking hours, bro. But no, so I love it. To be honest with you, the feeling, the social commentary, the happy ending, I like it all. So this one's honestly going to get an 85 for me as well. There's only one thing that bugs me. Just one thing.
I don't know why.
How the fuck the police came to the house to check it out and it was no gunshot holes in the wall.
Right.
At one point in time to get, I almost said Fred, Prince out the fucking wall. He was like, oh, let's check and see. Just mash up his whole wall to take it out to see the dog there. And they didn't go in the basement. They didn't see the big ass fucking cage of like Morlocks that they have just chilling down there, bro. Like, come on, man. That was the only part I was like, hey, you know what? I like this movie so much, I'm going to give it a pass. But let's be honest here for a sec.
They also said, like, oh, they made a whole thing out of, like, oh, you've got quite nice furniture. I can tell you're good for it, too. And, like, they were handling a sort of, like, ottoman that later Daddy went, opened, and grabbed a 12-gauge shotgun out of. Like, y'all couldn't just check a little more?
And like, I don't know, man. Like, that scene, that one scene was like, man, are you sure? Are you sure? Like, how are you going to get someone to come do a child abuse check and then not really look anywhere? Because there's no way they fixed all that gunshot, all that everything, the copious blood everywhere, the smell of death and corpses coming from the basement because there's a big fucking hole where there's bodies.
And they got the fucking rotisserie de Leroy sort of going down there as well.
Yeah, man, come on. But everything else is cool. So 85 for me. Now, we going to give this one a recommendation?
Yeah.
Yes.
For sure. Golden Seal. Everyone exhale slowly.
You know what? Fuck it. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I would too.
God damn it, I'm on board. Okay, fine. Yes.
It's been a while.
All right,
since
so
we've had one of these.
So
Arf, arf, arf.
There we go. Golden seal. That was the seal sound. Seal
Did you
bark.
just kill the seal? Arf, 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 dunk.
No, that was the sound that my stamp makes. Arf, arf, arf. And then I just stamped it. So there we go. This one does get the golden seal from us. Surprisingly, against my thoughts.
Same, actually.
Same, actually.
But things happen on this podcast, dear listener. So if you like what you've heard, want to provide some commentary, or tell us what you think is going to happen in the remake, hit us up. We're on X and Instagram at DOTD Horror. We're also on Facebook. That's Don't Open That Door. Plus, you can check everything we've done on our website, which is dotdhorror.com. And if you like us, hate us, or are just generally ambivalent, you can always give us a share, a like, a review. It does help us get the word out. And, we're always trying to expand in a positive way, though, not in a take your home and gentrify it and kick you out kind of way, because we don't do that here on the podcast.
And I will say really quick, this movie comes to us from a recommendation. So if you would like to see a movie featured here, hit us up. Thanks, Aaron, for suggesting it.
That's right. And we always eventually fulfill recommendations. So hit us up. We're good for it. But all that being said, generally take care of one another. Definitely don't hoard gold like a dragon.
Don't fucking start dynamite. Just period.
Yeah.
Just don't.
Unless you happen to be like in a mine with all the safety protocol in place, probably shouldn't dynamite shit. But as always, dear listener, don't open that door. Bye.